I hope no one ever experiences what it was like, because it is the most horrific feeling of mixed emotions. It was a horrific time, and a time I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Veronica Guerin was exposing a new type of criminal and a new type of crime that was beginning to emerge in Ireland at the time, the phenomenon of organised crime. And specifically, she focused in on one particular gang, that gang that was led by John Gilligan.
The guards were having real difficulty in dealing with modern organised crime at this period. It's difficult. I think it's only sort of 11 or 12 years ago, but it was a very, very different country. I mean, mobile phones were still a new thing, and the criminals were picking up very quickly on new technology like mobile phones. The guards had an old-fashioned radio system. It was a conservative, old-fashioned organisation, the guards. It had the wherewithal, but it didn't have the necessary skills or sharp management to sort of take on this new breed of criminal. Gilligan's gang were absolutely typical of this new type of gangster who were, fairly well armed and fairly sophisticated in their operations.
Growing up and as a teenager, she was very bubbly and gregarious, and had a great sense of fun about her, and mischievous fun would be how I would best remember her. She'd be always up to pranks, great sense of humour, and loved to laugh, and chose her company on that basis. Other girls would be going around in dresses and skirts, Veronica would be in the jeans and playing football with the lads. We all joined Fianna Fáil at a young age. Ours would have been a Fianna Fáil house.
Chuir sí féir ar a cuid scileanna in ógra Fianna Fáil, áit in airne sí alán teaghálacha.
Stop wasting their time telling Fianna Fáil what it must do, what it should do, what we must think, or what we should think.
My first Ógra Fianna Fáil meeting, Veronica was there, very much present, always at the centre of an argument.
Is an chuma a chaisiad in chéadúr ghearóid ó mórga?
Dairní mar an cardú le chéile, bhí grúpa beagran crochú háart ag an am.
In 1982, chúdar Conadáile chun takeú lena ngascíoch, Charlie.
Chumar hanamar chéile agus cumar amach ag agódíocht agus sin an sort nósa bheith aning ruidir bí le haispáint nach rá choshaintear na gná bhuiil sa fartaí sásta chursús lena lehéad.
Hapig sí an deis a hinne chur folatóirí agus íana rúnaí ar a New Ireland Forum.
Veronica became well known to us all. She was very vivacious, very friendly, moving around, and she was essentially Charlie Haughey's book carrier, I suppose you could say.
Harspáin sí a cuid cumas cumarsáide le ling Italian nócha nuair a tréag of Lantóirí Sacr na Héireann ag Fort na Róimhe.
An agreement has been reached between the company and representatives of the group in terms of reimbursement. They will definitely fly out of here at 7 o'clock this evening.
You'll miss the party in Dublin tonight.
She was actually working in Club Air, and Airline came across the story, saw that, got it published, and I'd say liked the buzz from it.
Bhí mise ag gobar in san Sunday Business Post, bhí siise freisin, agus bhí sé an mhaith, bhí sé an cróga agus an fisrach.
She had marvellous enthusiasm, determination and ability. The thing about it, she could get stories where other people couldn't.
Well, léir tapí go leor rééis tú tosú ag obair leis an Sunday Independent ach háirde, gur raibh spéise í díú I dúir de scíocht a bhain le cuasaí chorúlacht.
One of the few things that Veronica would have been passionate about, and long before journalism, was the effect that drugs was having on her community. And she became passionate about that, and she saw journalism as a vehicle to expose that.
She certainly was very, very brave. I think arguably she was attacked because of it. And I don't think, I certainly wouldn't do the things that Veronica Guerin did.
There was an old boys club, and she was definitely not part of that.
Crime reporters usually are hard-bitten, hard-drinking, foul-mouthed, fairly aggressive males.
She was glamorous, she was sun-tanned, and she was terrific on television.
Welcome, please, the Sunday Independent crime reporter, Veronica Guerin.
She arrived at about the time whenever crime journalism really took off, and she was the first sort of star in that era. And newspapers love crime. I mean, people love to read about crime. And so the expression is there, and it's true to a certain extent. If it bleeds, it leads. People do read these stories, and newspapers do increase sales by catering to that need.
Either a real crime correspondent now just talks to the police and looks after themselves. Ní sé sin fear corbe. De bhí sé treis rud nó díanamh. Bhar rud nó de fuair sé scoop treis trí teangahil passant dhéanamh lena criminals. Tá sa gom go nebrion gach crime correspondent eile trí na Paulini. Ach ní ire seoir é sin, cos sin cosú le press handouts de dailos na cops. Agus ní is a good an bhfuil na cops a gin sig an earing dit. You see, dar le Veronica, kai she hain, I have to put my hand in the side, I have to feel the wound.
Bhí siise ag dailál le lucht camaléireachta daoine úsáid drogaí agus gunaí agus freisin na Gardaí, cé gur rá dúshlán áirithe acu san bhí orthú carnáil a ghearra ó bhain go chéile. So bhí si ag brathint fón si a bhí chláiricha áirithe acu agus bhí si géirí stocha an gáthrá rastal agus ní dóilam gur airí leihí in san job sin. Bhí si, is dócha ag seola teachreachtaí ó thaobh go thaobh agus ní dóilam gur iiri seoireachta é sin.
Measam héin agus í ina máthir a go háire gur cinnte gur sí beaganín séanta nó beaganín sinanta. De chuirsí í héana mhail ar bhain leanúnach ar fa geabhla trí bliain.
I was well used to the stories that she ran and the headlines. And it was also clear that the Independent felt they had a real gold nugget really in Veronica, that she was courageous, she was willing to go places that maybe other journalists would be a bit more cautious about. She probably also had a naive feeling that her youth, her looks, or the fact that she was a young, vivacious woman, probably was a certain element of protection around her.
Ach bhí an nóisian sin caite drapaisí nuair a scaoilemh orchar tríd faoine ógatí.
Nuair a bhí na bagartaí cartha orthaí ag na daoine seo, chuir sé fearna orthaí agus gur sppraag sé le cholará le déanna cinnte gur stop ar na daoine sin.
Tháinig an dara rá mí anar nó go cuaig, bhí sé a bhfad níos trúmcúisí.
A man dressed in motorcycle clothing came to the door of Miss Guerin's home in Clochran, North County Dublin. The man pointed a gun at Miss Guerin's head.
I can hear I can really still hear the sound of the shot coupled with my roars.
I would have been aware of the dangers that she was facing because it was quite obvious if people attack her houses and then attack her that she was in very dangerous work. I would have made these views known to her. Indeed, I would have been fearful for my own family. We were Guerins also.
I mí man fornéideach nó go cuaig, chuir sí eile John Gilligan gur únsaigh sé í, agus cúisí bheith. Cuireadh an cás a réithrá faoi thó, agus bhí sé le dul os cór cuairte a rís ar an 9 láda úil, 1996. Ar an 6 lá fichid meitheamh, bhí sé os cór cuairte in nás na rí de bhar a bheith tomáint ro hapaig, a chaspáin an brethebh trócar ide, ag chur fináil 150 púntaí. Bhí sí riméideach ag fila bhaile.
Veronica Guerin was returning from a court sitting in Naas when her attackers struck.
For Midleach, Anne Harris, the Sunday Independent, Veronica's been shot, Veronica's dead.
We were on holiday with the kids, and right at the end of the news, the 1 o'clock news, Sean O'Rourke said a woman has been shot dead in a car in West Dublin.
Gardaí say that a woman has been shot dead. The sources say the woman was shot after her car was intercepted by two...
And I just turned the radio off.
Déting atmosfér na héireann agus mé teachta reis chun na tíre a chur a gompraid leis na atmosfér chéine a bhí ann nuair a tháinig mise reis chun na tíre in dhéag na hachtraí a tharla ar an 1 lá déag de bhí bhean fómhar 2001.
I was in New York waiting to attend a meeting of the UN to discuss the scourge of international drug trafficking. I was quite frankly devastated. My first thought was Veronica, a young woman, mother of a young child, wife, was dead.
At 1 o'clock exactly, work stopped at factories, shops, some areas of public transport, offices and on the streets.
I don't think that the government of the time realised what an effect this was going to have on the community, and I don't think they knew what to do. I think they were stuck, and as I recollect, initially the idea was to bring out another crime-fighting package or something like that, which was really a PR exercise. And then I remember sort of the days coming up to the funeral, more and more bunches of flowers started being put in the railings outside Leinster House, and we had never seen anything like that before. And I think when those bouquets started clanging, it was a bit like the Diana effect. All those flowers there in front of Leinster House, and as they started to get higher and higher, I think the government began to realise that they had to do something.
Nobody is untouchable, and the government is absolutely determined that whoever ordered this murder will, sooner or later, and I hope sooner, face charges in our courts.
Investigative journalist Veronica Guerin is cut down in a professional hit.
Throughout the day about the assassination of Veronica Guerin.
Say to the Minister for Justice, Nora.
I would say get back into this country and do something this minute about what's happening here. Charity begins at home.
There's no doubt the death of Veronica Guerin and the death of Jerry McCabe in the same month, definitely. I think it was kind of a body blow to the Gardaí and a body blow to the political system. The fact that the Dáil was waking up to what life was like for the guards on the street.
Her funeral was in effect a state funeral, and I suppose she caught the public imagination. She was a young mother, and then also the crime situation was really beginning to concern people, and I think all that came together in an outpouring of grief, emotion and concern.
Fós Fishani Akert Lachulesh Groshi Marav Camera. And not a wool mess with a kind of regardless, jokes to go to rise, but another small who you Weimar na Wakame Rivi, Cocunshan. I mean, the Ganav actually Hurshacher Hora, the Rudikant, actually guided to Jimmy or even cracked this Marshinda. I spent Kader Reeve, Groshi Kun Kofadishan.
I don't believe any of us would have been aware of what was going on, and to the extent that it had become an issue, let's call it that. Because, I mean, at that time we were looking after young children. You're looking after each other as siblings, you're looking after your mother, and you're doing things that have to be done.
There had been at least 2 articles in some of the papers which pretty well said I had blood on my hands, that it was my fault. It was the most personal stuff I'd ever read in all my years in politics then and since, that actually more or less said the Minister for Justice, Nora Owen, was responsible personally for this death.
Veronica's death is one of those events when a nation stops, when time stands still.
At the funeral, I remember feeling very isolated. I was sitting in the row immediately behind Tony O'Reilly and a number of the senior executives from The Independent. The Taoiseach was there, various other people. But what I do recall is almost feeling as if I was there on my own. Nobody of Tony O'Reilly or any of those, I don't recall any of them coming over to speak to me.
Veronica's daily round of activity was a matter of life and death. Shocking, but true.
An 9 lá de bhí úl 1996, tháinig Cás John Gilligan os Cúr na Cuairte in Áur.
Superintendent Brendan Quinn told Judge John Brophy his directions were to apply to have the 2 summonses for common assault and criminal damage struck out. Judge Brophy then asked those in court to rise and observe a minute's silence for the late Veronica Guerin, who was the principal state witness. He explained that the case could not go ahead because there was no effective evidence that could be offered because of her untimely death.
For the first time in the history of the state, a specific type of investigation was set up. Her murder caused serious public and political outcry.
There's no doubt the Gardaí have carried out what can only be described as a blitz on Dublin's criminal gangs.
We are now focusing in on a small group of a particular gang, and we will not stop this investigation until we obtain the evidence which is necessary to charge these people and bring the perpetrators before the courts.
The fact that they chose to kill her because she put them at risk, it suggested that here was a young woman who was doing a job that the state was supposed to do and wasn't doing. So they did have to respond in a real way.
The setting up of the Criminal Assets Bureau was very important for the Gardaí, Department of Social Welfare and the tax system and the customs. It recognised the importance of their role in the fight against crime, and they were working together. And I will recall very much when I went down into rather cramped offices and seeing, in one room, the 3 departments working together and big boards up with sort of the links, and clearly this was recognising the multifaceted role of catching criminals. There's no doubt in my mind that it did expedite all parties united to agree the package of legislation that the government brought in July and subsequently in October of 1996.
Bhain sláid úsáid as móna neamhchleachtaithe le líon cás dhúnmhartha Veronica Guerin.
It quickly became apparent that the only way to break the Gilligan gang and to find out what exactly had happened, why Veronica Guerin was murdered and what the gang was up to, was to attack it from within.
Cuireadh an clár tearmann fine bun don chéadú riamh chun finithe stáit a chosint.
A witness protection program had already been tried in the north a few years earlier and it didn't work. The problem was that the evidence that these individuals gave against their former colleagues was found to be highly unreliable, and many of the people that were convicted as part of those Supergrass trials were subsequently acquitted, and the whole system collapsed in Northern Ireland. So that was the danger that the state here had to be aware of. When Charles Bowden and Russell Warren and John Dunn went into the witness protection programme, they weren't given any guarantees in relation to what their lives would be like in future. They weren't coached in relation to how they would give their evidence or what they were going to say. They were given immunity from prosecution for certain offences, specifically in relation to the murder of Veronica Guerin.
Tugh Carol Farrow's Coran Chuirt Chorúil Speisialta, Patrick Eugene Holland, Paul Ward, Brian Meehan agus John Gilligan. Cinntíoch Patrick Eugene Holland do bhar cinnta drugaí agus gearmh téarma presuntachta 5 bliain a laidíomh go 2 bliain tar éis Afcorc. Tá sé brúsún hasna fi láthair chúisna eile. Cinntíoch Paul Ward in únmharú Veronica Guerin le carfíne seo olbhreathadóir. Iníag Afcorc cuireadh a cinntiú neamhní. Ach cuireadh pín réad a 2 bliain do bhar círéib a hitimach I brúsún bhuin seo. Tá sé saoire inis. Eisacadú Brian Meehan an Olin. An tain duine ó Ron Gilligan a cinntíoch le dúnmharú Veronica Guerin. Gearmh téarma presuntachta sílar. Tugadh John Gilligan os Corna Cuairte Chomá tar éis a seachada ó Hasana.
The 3 special criminal court judges took 2 hours to deliver their verdict. Guilty on 11 counts of importation of cannabis resin, but not guilty on the murder of Veronica Guerin. Mr. Justice O'Donovan criticised Gilligan, telling him that never in the history of jurisprudence had one person been found to have caused so much wretchedness to so many.
Is cinnte level an íormhais déanach réalt aistí ach go háirithe tuisc an slí léirigh na cólachtaí Scannal ina le. Déanach rá Scannal fuaí an ceann bacháúla an ceann le Kate Blanchard.
I think that Veronica was such a complex, passionate, extraordinary human being, first and foremost, a journalist second. But in the end, I am speculating, like the rest of Ireland, as to what motivated Veronica.
I thought the film was superb. I thought it was about 80% accurate.
What's the score?
Nothing. Canton is a vacuum cleaner today, man. It's unreal. He's what you call a striker. Number 7, watch him.
A striker? What did you say his name was?
Eric Cantona.
Born 26th of May 1966, led Man United to 6 cups, winning Premier League Football of the Year in '89. Is that him?
We think. I think it is, yeah. Fair play to you.
Ní dóilm gur sais léach de hir seoirí í in san slí Beiidir a rá léirithe in san Scannán cáiliú agus leabhar agsúla tá fáiltithe ban cneasta ban sinneanta nó mar deartháin naíomh a bhí a gceist.
The terrible unfortunate thing about Veronica's case as well was that we saw the law applied more vigorously than we saw justice being applied. There is no doubt that the evidence was there, in my view, to secure more convictions than were secured.
Her legacy very much would be the legislation which was passed at the Dáil at that time, the setting up of the Criminal Assets Bureau and so forth.
Is scéal cearchalach is tócha scéal na gorúlathe, scéal na mrogaí, í siúdatá pléile drogaí sa chairl blá clí agus a gar gaile típ na tíre.
It's an indictment on our society, the fact that we have so many juvenile criminals, the fact that so many children today can't read or write. I mean, that's an indictment of our education system, and nobody seems to care. And then we all wonder, 2 weeks later or 2 years later, how come we have so many young, violent, dangerous gunmen? We didn't learn the lessons of the murder of Veronica Guerin. We as a state were focused on tracking down the killers of Veronica Guerin. There was a younger, a more violent, a more dangerous, more unstable breed of criminal growing up, who is now a very violent and dangerous adult criminal today, who doesn't know the name of Veronica Guerin and couldn't care less.
It becomes less painful, and your memories, you start recalling the lighter memories and the funnier times and everything else. I mean, it's undoubtedly her fault that we're doing this as Perla, because I was always slowed Irish, and in order that we be allowed out as 2 kids, she'd take my Irish and write the essay and then write it out in English for me. So if I was asked questions on it, I'd know it. So I mean, you remember things like that. Time certainly doesn't heal, but it does make it easier.
I'm very honoured to accept this wonderful award on behalf of my wonderful mum, Veronica. I would also like to thank Granada and the BBC judges for awarding her with this wonderful award. This award I will cherish forever. Thank you very much indeed.